Hello. This is my video response to the reading Work as Self-Expression by Dorothy Soleil and Shirley Cloys, To Work in Love. This is for the Creative Self class of Concordia University in the fall 2025 semester. Let's get straight into it. So, the key question in this reading is how the work affects the worker. How does work affect the worker? Um, and evaluating whether or not the end matter matters more than the means to get to the end output. Let's talk about how the work affects the worker. So, this key idea, which let's talk about it, overlook this question. We are doomed to understand work only in terms of exchange of value and thereby to destroy the self expression of the worker. If we neglect this question, we will restrict human work to one purpose only, namely to provide necessary useful goods and services, as if that could be accomplished without reflecting on the author of the work, the worker. Um, what we're positing here is that take the output, the goods and services that come out of work, and place it over the work actually itself um, is incorrect. We're saying that the objective reality of work matters more than the subjective, which I'll get into. Um, and in this reading, the key idea is that subjective work uh, and the process matters more than the objective outcome. And in a capitalist society, we tend to put the outcome before that. Uh, she posits that good work gives the person a chance to utilize and develop her faculties. And Thomas Aquinas said that there can be no joy in life without joy in work. Bad work is meaningless, boring, stultifying, or nerve-wracking work that reduces our human dignity. That the being actualizes themselves, becomes the subject they are meant to be, becoming truly themselves through work. We're positing that work itself matters. This is why it's a function of discussion for humans, and why I don't know why this is even a discussion. Um, the key idea is her classifying the meaning of work into three dimensions: self-expression, social relatedness, and reconciliation with nature, and how these could be interpreted as just material definitions and dimensions, objective, but in reality they're also spiritual and subjective, and that the spiritual dimension is too easily overlooked. I completely agree. That the meaning of work not only lies in production but in self-expression, social relatedness, reconciliation with nature. We have to learn to reject meaningless, boring, stultifying, or nerve-wracking work because it is quote-unquote bad. That we humans have an undeniable need for self-expression, and labor and its subjective dimension is a way to fulfill this need. So let's get into the objective versus subjective value of work that she had posited. We're talking about the objective side, which is what's produced, technology, profit, and the subjective, which is what happens inside the worker. During the creation process, it's the worker putting the pieces together to develop the product. And a quote by the Pope, who was very much in favor of the subjective nature of work, that human subjectivity is the locus of divine presence. This is the deepest reason for the priority of labor over capital, which, when we get into industrialization, the mechanized work, what ended up happening in the Industrial Revolution and as of modern capitalism, has been the priority of capital over labor. And this is a big theme as of recently of the problems of the system we live in. That the commodities produced is always valued now over the work itself, and that's just been a fundamental problem that she's critiquing in this. And what a lot of people find themselves in is alienating themselves when they don't believe in the capitalist system that they live in, because they're realizing that this is a quote from a young person, I don't want to join the rat race, not to be enslaved by machines, bureaucracies, boredom, ugliness. I don't want to become a moron, robot, commuter. I want to deal with people, not masks. People matter, nature matters, beauty matters, wholeness matters. I want to be able to care. As you can see, the theme of when she defined what good work and bad work was, that bad work is very much parallel to this quote. And we can see that a lot of the parallels of objective realities of work exist in this. And that the subjectiveness of work that we don't want to be doing, which is this whole theme, it's like we live in a system where we're like producing immense quantities of goods and we're doing work that we don't want to do. This is going to bring me to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the survival paradigm, which is my critique of the reading and my understanding of the reading. So she's positing this like idealistic way to approach work, that we as the subjects of completing work should always be prioritizing the joy of completing work over doing work that we don't want to do because of the output that companies tell us to do, right? That like we're forced to do. But the reality of the situation is so much more complex, and I want to comment on how I think she's totally right that we should be treating work more spiritually, that we should be treating it as like a self-actualization within our work, that we should be trying to be our best selves in the joy of our work. But the system we live in doesn't allow us to do that. We have, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have these needs that come before self-actualization. In order for us to get to the subjectivity part, we have to take care of ourselves first as primates, as humans, beyond the subjective nature of the objective nature first, which is taking care of our shelter, food, warmth, sleep, and then as the hierarchy goes, then we move up to safety, resources, security, then we move up to the belonging in society and the social relatedness part, and then we move up to esteem, and then to self-actualization. And the problem with the capitalist system, and the problem that I have with the article, is that we just can't, because we live in a society that capitalizes off our survival needs and forces us to comply with the high grocery prices, and that's our access to food, or the high rent, that's our access to safety and housing, in which we can't actually achieve the self-actualization, the meaning of work, of good work, of joyful work, of through the systematic oppression. I'm torn with the vision and today's reality, because I find her argument very compelling, that subjective meaning alone. My problem is that subjective meaning alone isn't enough to change society, because the systems need objective incentives to change, because we live in this post-modern capitalist society, industrial society, that is now being almost feudalist because of the high concentration. Like, we have such a gap now in the top 1% and the bottom 99%, in which the top 1% controls everything below. And if the top 1% isn't changing anything about the system, especially governments, nothing is going to change. If you can advocate as much as you want about this idea, which is awesome and perfect and totally the right answer, and is true, it is the truth, that the work itself and the means matter more. I totally agree. It's just the 1% doesn't apply that logic and profits off of it and values the objective side more. And so my question for the future of this reading is, how can we design modern economies that honor the subjective value of work, the part that makes us human, while still meeting objective needs like survival and sustainability? And I think this is one of the great moral and social challenges of our generation, specifically because we live in such a society that we have little say as pawns and cons of the system to actually get out of the system. It's this like almost matrix level where you know what's going on, but you can't do anything about it because you have to be concerned with your safety first before you can even try to self actualize. I think there's probably ways in which I could apply that now, in which I could be more concerned with my own subjective reality of my work in comparison to my objective output. And I think that in small degrees that can be applicable to everyone, uh, but for survival's sake, we don't really get to choose our work, and that's part of the problem because there's so limited opportunities and so much control and ownership over everything that is work that our choices are very limited in what work we can actually accomplish um, in order to also meet the objective needs of survival. Uh, these are my references. I've kind of gone through. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.